going back over some things here and continue down the line on the paraffin test, on the fingerprints, all the things that really matter and would get this case thrown out if Oswald had ever gone to trial. Again, this is how we ended. I'm going to start again on this. The results of the paraffin test. Okay? Dallas City Hall Criminal Investigation Laboratory. Okay? DCCCIL. So they sent off, they took a plaster cast, or not a plaster cast, however you do a paraffin test, you do like a cast or something. It picks up paraffin, nitrates off the skin, and that basically will tell them if you fired a rifle or been near a rifle. Now, when you're firing, or a handgun or something like that, when you're firing a rifle, because you've got to sight it, especially with Oswald with that scope, your cheek is going to be up near the rifle, and so if you're firing right-handed, it's going to be your right cheek. And then when that bullet fires, it's going to blast back from that explosion of the cap and the gunpowder. Some of that's going to blast out of the bolt. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going to blast backwards and out of the bolt, because it's a gas, and into your skin. Okay? And so, if you fired a rifle, it's going to be right there, obvious. You can't get away from it. Okay? And you can wash your skin, you can scrub your skin. It'll still, the residue will still be there for a week or so. So, and the same thing with a handgun. If you're firing a handgun, okay, same thing's going to happen. Especially Oswald had a revolver. It's got those little chambers that's going to shoot out from the side onto his hand, especially the firing hand. Okay, so if you do a paraffin test on the face, on the hands, if it comes up positive, that means one of two things, or maybe one of three things: that Oswald fired a gun, fired a rifle, was making bullets somehow. I don't know. Also, you can get a positive on a paraffin test for handling photographs. You know, Oswald had a lot of cameras, and if you're developing your own photographs, they're going to have nitrates, okay? And that's going to come out on your hands there. But usually if you're handling photographs, you're handling with both hands instead of positive on one hand. And there's also the possibility that a little bit of nitrates come back from handling boxes. I'm still trying to find some information about that. Nothing yet, but that's one thing that I've heard. Also, let's not forget, Oswald did have that handgun, okay? But just because he came, I'm going to show you where he tested positive for the handgun on the right hand, doesn't mean he fired that rifle and killed, or excuse me, fired that revolver and killed Officer Tippett. He could have fired. He could have gone out to the firing range, that famous, firing range they're always saying he's out at, with his handgun and practice with his handgun. Okay, and that's still going to leave a little bit of nitrates in the skin. But anyway, let's read the results. So they send it off to be tested. This is at the hospital, actually, not just the police. And then it says, here's the results. Result of examination: no nitrates were found on exhibit number 1. It says here, exhibit number 1 is one manila envelope containing a paraffin cast of the right side face of Lee Oswald. So there you go, folks. Case dismissed. Oswald walks free, at least for killing the president, because there's no fucking way you could be up in that 6th floor window, Oswald, with that rifle in his hand, firing 3 shots and killing the president, and not have a positive nitrate test. It's completely impossible, okay? Unless he was wearing some kind of, I don't know, shield or mask or something like that, and then hid that or destroyed it or somewhere. Of course, the obvious question, if he was wearing, wearing some kind of mask or shield to keep the paraffin. It's not going to keep it out of his hair. It's not going to keep it out of his shirt. Okay? So, they got a problem there. And, you know, if you did that on the... They took his paraffin test at like 1 a.m. in the morning on the 23rd and came back that afternoon. They realized they had a problem. So the Confederates of this group, whoever is responsible in the police department, and their Confederates in the FBI, and their Confederates in the Secret Service, not everyone, just a few individuals in those different groups, they realized they had a problem. And of course, they would have known they would have had a problem anyway, because Oswald didn't fire the weapon at all. But they're going to have to get rid of Oswald, okay? Because, I mean, I can imagine it like this. Here, Oswald, take the rifle on Saturday and go to the firing range and shoot some test targets, okay? We want you to train some more Cubans. We want you to get a little prepared there, okay? Very, very, very possible. So he's doing his duty, his undercover duty. He's following the orders of these right-wing groups, and they, little does he know, okay, that they're going to use that to frame him. Okay? So that's what he does. He goes there and fires a rifle, but he washes his skin, and it doesn't stay. Then they realize after the paraffin test they got a problem. This is why Ruby's around him all the time to observe, but doesn't kill him. And then the very next day, Oswald gets gunned down in the basement because they realize Oswald cannot go to trial. If he gets to the county jail, they'll never get him. He'll go to trial. He'll be, you know, probably won't even get an indictment. Okay? Because the judge is going to look at this and say, hey, if you're saying he fired the rifle and there's no positive on the paraffin on his cheek, how can that be? Anyway, so there you go. Now, here's the other results. It says nitrate patterns consistent with the subject having discharged a firearm were present on exhibits 2 and 3. The pattern of number 3 is typical of the pattern produced in firing a revolver. Okay? So, number 2 is his left hand, number 3 is his right hand. Okay? So, if he had a revolver in his hand, maybe he cupped his left hand underneath the butt of the revolver to cup his hand and then fired the revolver. But that doesn't mean he shot Tippett. Remember, he could have gone out to that firing range and fired off those rounds. Okay? And I know it's what? Say he did it on Sunday, and that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's 5 days, but you can still have a positive. But it doesn't look good for Oswald in regards to shooting, you know, Officer Tippett. But he damn sure didn't shoot the president. Okay? So there you go. There's the damn, you know, whole case right there. And you know the Warren report and the FBI, they saw this and they realized they had a problem. So what you do when you don't have evidence to prove conclusively, like a nitrate positive test on the cheek, you start dissing the police department that did the test. Well, they haven't been as experienced as the FBI. Okay? Well, you don't think the FBI did a nitrate test on Oswald's dead body while he was laying there at the morgue before he was buried the next day? You don't think they took their own nitrate paraffin test and did it themselves too? When they came, the reason why you don't hear about that is because it came back negative also. Okay? So what they've done is they've taken a palm print off of Oswald and they put it on and inside the barrel. They put it on the rifle, the barrel there. No fingerprints on the rifle, and then, you know, got palm prints or fingerprints somehow on the bag that they don't have a picture of. So you got all these large freaking holes. And here, I'll go over it again. The Warren Commission says that Oswald brought in, he was a communist revolutionary, okay, ready to kill the president. And like I said, he's got to be the luckiest fucking revolutionary ever to get a job in a building that has 6 floors that he can fire from a month and a half before the president even knows he's going to Dallas. The president doesn't even know he's going to Dallas when Oswald gets to Dallas. But somehow Oswald is psychic and is able to figure that out and gets a job by accident, supposedly, through Mrs. Payne, where his wife was staying, at her house. So he's the luckiest revolutionary ever, okay? And then when he gets to the school book depository, there's 2 buildings. They don't put him in the other building up Houston Street. They put him on the one right facing Dealey Plaza, where he's got a view of the president when he comes around. So the president doesn't even know he's coming to Dallas. Oswald doesn't even know he's coming to Dallas, but he's psychic and knows the president's coming to Dallas somehow. And also, Oswald was so psychic that he bought this rifle back in February of this year. So if you got February to November, that's 2 and 11, that's 9 months. So Oswald was so psychic that he knew the president was going to be coming to Dallas. Okay, and so he bought that rifle so he could kill that president 9 months later. Anyway, and then the other holes I've gone over is that they say Oswald brought the rifle to the school book depository with the paper bag, although his fingerprints aren't found on the paper bag. They say they are, but they aren't. Okay? Critics, lone nutters say that Oswald's prints were found on the bag. They weren't. Okay? And then supposedly Oswald brings in, seen by Frazier, the rifle, even though the rifle broken down is 34 inches, and, which is close to 3 feet. And Frazier says he tucks it under his arm and holds it, clasping it with the ends of his fingers, and brings it into the school book depository. But we've gone over that. We've already measured from the inside of Oswald's arm to the end of his fingertips, 24 inches. There's no way in hell Oswald could carry that rifle, like Frazier said, into the school book depository unless it was hanging down below his hand. Okay? And then we get to the next obvious thing, is that at the time the president, we'll go through these other statements here a little later, at the time the president is going by, or right before the president goes by, people are seeing 1 to 2 people of various different descriptions. Only one of them out of 10 looked like Oswald in the window at 12:15. Oswald is seen in the downstairs second floor lunchroom at the same time drinking a Coke. How can he be up there? And who was up there with him if he's downstairs drinking a Coke in the second floor lunchroom? Okay. Another obvious glaring thing is that with the rifle, Oswald has no fingerprints on the rifle. He's loaded ammunition into, I've gone over this before, he's loaded ammunition into that clip. There's no Oswald fingerprints on the clip or thumbprints on the clip or any of the shell casings or the telescopic scope or the barrel or the wooden, the wooden stock which absorbs, oil, or the trigger or the trigger guard or the bolt. Nothing. Okay? How's it possible? Okay. Oh yeah, he wiped his prints. Okay. Off the bullets too? All in 90 seconds? Sure. And then supposedly the paper bag that Oswald brought the rifle with was found in the corner, but there's no pictures of it in the corner. It's just an officer saying he saw it in the corner 30 minutes after the shooting. Anybody could have put that fucking bag there. Okay? But Oswald does hide the rifle. He's smart enough to hide the rifle, but not the bag that he brought the rifle in. He could have put that in his pocket, went downstairs, put it in the second floor lunchroom garbage can, or taken it home with him and tore it up, thrown it in someone's yard as he's walking to the Texas Theater. So there's a lot of circumstantial, but nothing conclusive. And like I said, any two-bit lawyer with half a brain could tear this to pieces. No prints on the rifle, and then right now we just went over the paraffin test. That ends the case right there. This is why he couldn't go to trial, because they knew they wouldn't have him. Okay, they knew it. That's also a reason why you want to take it out of the hands of the Dallas police, because the Dallas police they're collecting the evidence, and they're gonna start questioning. Well, wait a minute, he doesn't have a paraffin test positive on his cheek, which means he didn't fire a rifle, and he doesn't have fingerprints on the gun. Oswald didn't fire this rifle. That's why Chief Curry said the things he said 15 years later. He wanted to believe Oswald did it, but there's nothing to say that he was there in that window. Just like Curry said, there's nothing to put Oswald in that window with that rifle firing to kill the president. Pretty damn clear. Anyway, so I saved this paper. I'm going to go on here. So when you have no positive evidence, you want to poison the well, okay? Because people watch TV, they read the newspapers, and so if you can get a jump on it ahead of time and start setting up the case in the news media, by the time you get a jury, I don't care what they say, they're still going to be saying, well, wait a minute, I read in the newspaper, I heard on TV, in their mind, and then they're going to be looking to confirm those things in whatever case is presented. So you poison the jury pool ahead of time. This is the statements that they did that. On all these statements are 1123, 1124. Lee Harvey Oswald was charged with murdering the President of the United States, insisted he is not an assassin, but an officer said today, I think we've got some good results in the paraffin test on both hands. And see, your average citizen's not going to know that in order to fire a rifle through a telescopic scope, he's going to have a positive paraffin test on his cheek there. With his jaw thrust out and his eyes intent and piercing, Oswald kept telling newsmen, I did not kill President Kennedy. I did not kill anyone. I don't know what this is all about. City Detective Charles Brown said he believed the hand test was positive, was not certain about the results of a paraffin test on Oswald's face. See, you saw that paper. They would have read that paper because the paraffin test for the cheek was the very first thing. The second thing would have been the two hands. So he knows. He knows. But he didn't want to put any doubt in the people in the media out there. They've already said, hey, we got the guy. Yeah, so it was, I believe it was positive for the hands. I'm not certain about the paraffin test. He is certain. He knows. He read the same damn test we just read. Okay? Which puts the paraffin test for the cheek first. So in order to get to the hands, you got to read the paraffin test for the cheek first. So he's lying. And then first ad and second lead Oswald. Oswald charged last night with murdering the president, insisted he is not the assassin. But an officer said today, I think we got some good results from the paraffin test on both Oswald's hands. So you're poisoning the well, okay? If you got a positive paraffin test, it must mean he fired the rifle, right? Doesn't mean that. The people watching this and reading this don't know that. But you get it into a jury case then you've got a lawyer bringing his scientists and forensics guys saying no, it doesn't mean that he fired a rifle, just if it has it on his hands. There are no immediate explanation from the police as to what the paraffin test would have shown. Oswald fired at least one shot in the slaying of patrolmen and attempted a second shot when arrested. A rifle was used to slay the president. Paraffin tests made to determine whether powder residues from whether he had fired a gun were positive. This meant Oswald had fired a weapon within a short time before he was arrested. Apparently, it could have been either a rifle or a pistol or both. They wouldn't say. And if you want to say a short time, that's kind of ridiculous because Oswald's arrested at 1:50 p.m. Okay? And the paraffin test wasn't conducted till 1:30 in the morning, so 12 hours later. Alright. And this is interesting. Paraffin tests are not admissible as evidence. I don't know if that's true or not, but that would be interesting, wouldn't it? And this is my conclusion. This is exactly what I just said. From Lane's brief on Oswald, Wade answers, while truthfully, with a study in understatement. The district attorney neglected to state the additional facts that tests had been conducted on Oswald's face, that the tests revealed that there was no traces of gunpowder on Oswald's face. So you just mentioned that, yeah, there was a positive paraffin test, but you don't mention where, okay? And you also don't mention, oh, but it was only for his hands, oh, and he didn't have nitrates on his cheek. So that's an understatement. One fact emerges clear with clarity. The paraffin test did not prove Oswald fired a rifle recently. The test tended to prove Oswald had not fired a rifle recently. This fact alone raises that reasonable doubt that a jury might utilize in finding the defendant not guilty. Again, another reason why you had to kill him, because if there's no positive paraffin test, okay, on the cheek, case over. And this is exactly what I said. Nitrates would not be found if you wore gloves or a face mask. But then again, where's the gloves? Where's the face mask? If you left a fucking paper bag and he hid the gun, where's the gloves and the face mask? And also, you're going to have gunpowder, nitrate positive, in your hair, on your clothes. He's wearing the same shirt. And here you go. There's the director of the FBI in Dallas. So the head guy in Dallas of the FBI, poisoning the well again. I've seen the paraffin test. The paraffin test proves that Oswald had nitrates and gunpowder on his hands and face. It proves he fired a rifle on November 22nd. A complete and outright lie. It's not that he misquoted, someone told him. He said he saw the report. He completely lied. On orders, most likely. So when the FBI says something, it's not like nowadays. When the FBI says something in 1963, you can take it to the bank, most likely, is what people were told. So there's the FBI, the head of the FBI in Dallas, completely lying. And here's another damning statement. I don't know if all this is true, but this was posted on Quora. It said Lee Harvey Oswald had a paraffin test on his cheek. This was then subjected to 3 tests. Standard paraffin test was negative for gunpowder residue. That's enough for him to walk right there. FBI then ran a chemical spectroscopy test on the paraffin, which was also negative. The FBI then sent the paraffin sample to Oak Ridge Lab for neutron activation analysis, which was also negative. Now, I don't know what any of that means, but, you know, the people that know their shit saying Oswald didn't have any nitrates on his cheek. He didn't fire a rifle. J. Edgar Hoover leaving no stone unturned in his efforts to confirm that he had solved the JFK murder in 2 hours on November 22nd, then had 7 FBI agents fire a rifle and had paraffin applied to the cheeks to show that neutron activation analysis was unreliable. Unfortunately for J. Edgar, all 7 tests were positive. Of course, the Warren Commission reported that this in the volume 26 reporting. Just kidding. So they never reported that. So anything that didn't show to undermine Oswald wasn't put in there. Or that would have cleared Oswald wasn't put in the Warren report. Cherry picking. Alright. Alright. And this one is Oswald rifle and the paraffin test from 22 November 1963 website. And it says here, not only was the Warren Commission unable to demonstrate that Oswald had committed the crime alone, but two important pieces of evidence showed that he had almost certainly not played any part in the shooting. The poor physical condition of the rifle and the absence of gunpowder residue on Oswald's cheek. The condition of the 6.4 rifle. And again, you got to wonder, okay, many people have mentioned this before, why order a rifle through a mail order company, okay, that's traceable back to your post office box, okay, when you can easily, like it said in the movie, JFK, you could easily walk into, you know, any gun shop in Dallas, right there, write down a false name with your false ID, and walk out with a much better rifle with ammunition that you could find anywhere in Texas, much easier than this Carcano Italian rifle. I mean, think about that. Oswald's not stupid, okay, but he orders both the rifle and the handgun through the mail order, and then, you know, what's really funny is he orders the rifle and the handgun in February of 1963, and then when he's working at the Riley Coffee Company in New Orleans, okay, and he'd already taken a shot, supposedly at Walker, in like, what, March or so, and the Warren Commission people mention, they go to great detail about mentioning how Oswald went over to the, you know, that garage next door to the Riley Coffee Company and looked through the guy's gun magazines and probably used one of the coupons from the gun magazines to order the rifle, okay, even though he had already had the rifle in Dallas 2 months before. So they're pulling crap out of nowhere, and it just flows over people's heads. Oh yeah, maybe that's where Oswald got the rifles. He saw it in that gun magazine, okay, and he ordered it through a coupon from the gun magazine from that garage, even though he already had the rifle and brought it from Dallas, and the handgun also. So this is kind of bullshit you have to put up with when you're dealing with the fucking Warren Commission. Okay. Let's see here. I will say one thing, and I think I'm going to go over this later, but I was just reading about Earl Warren last night, and within 2 years of 1965, within 1 year, okay, of the Warren Commission, Warren came out with a new ruling in the Supreme Court about the rules of evidence, okay, and how they set up a higher standard for rules of evidence, what's admitted in federal courts, and then all of that was adopted in, you know, various ways in various state courts and county courts. So maybe you think about the psychological aspects of that, is that Warren was so disturbed by his manipulation of the evidence and lack of evidence that he felt compelled to bring this federal evidence case forward. And they even passed legislation encouraged by him to adopt standardized rules for evidence. So I would think that what he did to Oswald and the Warren Commission had something to do with that. Anyway, it says the experts from the U.S. Army and the FBI who had tested the rifle discovered that it was actually not usable in its own state. Shims had to be applied to the telescopic sight before the rifle could be aimed. Even after the telescopic sight had been repaired, it proved unreliable and inaccurate. The condition of both the bolt and the trigger pull meant the rifle could not be aimed accurately. The rifle discovered on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository could not have caused any of the wounds to the President, Conley, or Teague except by accident. Alright, now before we get into that, I have all due respect for the FBI and the things they do, and the service that they provide, and the average guys in the FBI. They've done a great job, especially when I was in Portland. They busted those guys, the Portland 7, that were going to basically blow up my synagogue and then go in there and kill everybody. They did a top-notch job. But that same Portland FBI later on carried out all kinds of massive fraud and injustice, namely on one guy named Brandon Mayfield. Now, Brandon Mayfield was a Muslim American. He had converted. His wife was Muslim and he converted. He was a lawyer. Okay? Hold on a second. That's him right there. So he's not some Muslim guy. There's his wife. That's him. Okay? So, let's just be clear that even, this is like 2001, 2002, maybe 2002 or so. And even in liberal Oregon, okay? So, 40 years later, the FBI was still up to shenanigans. So, if you don't think the FBI was up to worse shenanigans back in the 60s with Hoover, then I can't help you, okay? But with Brandon Mayfield, this was just the epitome of outright outrageousness. So this is what happened. I'll tell you the story real quick. There was a bombing in Spain on a train, okay, by a bunch of Muslim guys, okay? There was a fingerprint that was found, okay, on a bag that was part of the bomb. That, so if you don't think fingerprints can survive on fabric, they can. So the Spanish authorities found a fingerprint, I think it was a thumbprint, on a portion of the bag that was remainder that had blown up and killed a bunch of people on a train in Madrid. Okay? A bunch of Muslim guys got arrested. Okay? From that, okay, they arrested an imam, okay, in Portland. Somehow they, I don't know. The FBI said that the fingerprint, okay, on the bomb in Spain belonged to this outspoken Muslim cleric in Oregon. Okay, he had been outspoken about the FBI's treatment, okay, of Muslims in Oregon, and putting them under surveillance for no reason, things like that. Very, very outspoken. I also believe he was the leader of this Bilal mosque where a lot of these guys from the Portland 7 some of them had been attending, okay? And being a Jew, I'm right down the street from the mosque, okay? So, I go by that mosque every day. I wasn't in fear, okay? They tried to come to my synagogue. They had talked about and planned, my synagogue to go in and blow up bombs and kill people. Anyway, that was the Portland 7. So this imam gets arrested because he's very outspoken against the FBI and the federal government's treatment of Muslims and after 9/11. So he's targeted by the FBI and set up. So they decided that, hey, the fingerprint on the bomb, okay, in Spain matches this Muslim cleric, okay, and also when he was flying back into the country, all of a sudden, here we go, a paraffin test that they can't use in court according to some people, but they did explosives tests, paraffin, same thing, nitrates tests on his luggage, and boom, wow, there's nitrates on the inside of his luggage, which means he carried a bomb, right? I mean, how else would they gotten there? They seized his luggage, okay, took it to the lab, and then, wow, all of a sudden, this Muslim cleric who's outspoken against the FBI, yeah, he has nitrates on his luggage, and therefore he must have been carrying a bomb. And then, oh, by the way, he never went to Spain, but the thumbprint found on the bomb, found on a piece of luggage that was part of the bomb, or a handbag or something like that, that matches him. That's what the FBI said, is a perfect match. Okay? And because what had happened is that the FBI was keeping a database of all terrorist attacks all around the world, and so they were asking foreign governments to send them copies of those, fingerprints and evidence, so they could put it in a database and they could use, because we're invading Afghanistan and stuff like that, and we're finding people. So then they take the cleric's fingerprints and send it to the Spanish police for them to double check, and the Spanish police check the cleric's fingerprints against the bomb fingerprint, and they say, no, it's not a match. But the FBI insists that it's a match, okay? So we're not talking, they didn't find anything. We're talking the FBI is manufacturing and falsely identifying things, okay? And this wasn't coming from the crime lab of the FBI. This was coming from the heads of the FBI, okay? So guess what happens? This cleric goes to jail on a false report of nitrates in his luggage, and that his fingerprint was on the luggage of the bomb in Spain. He sits in jail. A member of the mosque, Brandon Mayfield, the same mosque, is also an attorney. He starts representing the cleric, the imam, and starts speaking out that, hey, first of all, there were no nitrates. It's a false positive. It's not correct. The FBI made up that information, and the Spanish police are saying that the fingerprints don't match. But the FBI, God be damned, we're going to shut up this Muslim cleric for outspeaking, against abuses of the FBI. We're going to keep him in jail, no bond. All of a sudden, now Brandon Mayfield's in the spotlight, and he becomes a target of the FBI. Okay? Under the Patriot Act, if the FBI just decides to go into your house, they don't need a warrant. Because they can say it's terrorist related. So, it's called a sneak and peek. They went into Brandon Mayfield's home, downloaded his hard drive on his computer, dusted for fingerprints and DNA, took his DNA off his toothbrush, took hair samples from his bathroom, went back and matched it, and said, hey, there's something right here. And I don't remember exactly what they arrested it on, but eventually they ended up arresting Brandon Mayfield. So let me go read real quick what that was. Excuse me, I got that wrong. It was the nitrates that got the imam arrested, and because Brandon Mayfield was speaking out against his client being arrested and held without bond, okay, then all of a sudden, wow, fingerprints on the bag that detonated were found by the Spanish authorities. Spanish National Police shared the fingerprints with the FBI through Interpol. 20 possible matches from one fingerprint of the fingerprints were found in the FBI database, and one of the possible matches was Brandon Mayfield. But the other 19 guys weren't speaking out against the FBI and their abuses of the Patriot Act. His prints were in the FBI database as they were taken as part of his standard procedure when he joined the military. He became a prime suspect because of his conversion to Islam and because he had represented the Portland 7, despite those being First Amendment protected activities. The FBI concluded the fingerprints were a 100% match on March 20th, 2004. According to the court documents in the Honorable Judge Ann Aiken's decision, this information was largely fabricated and concocted by the FBI and the Department of Justice. So if you don't think the FBI, if they can do it today, they damn sure would have done it back then. If you don't think the FBI would have went in and taken prints off of Oswald's dead fucking hand and palm and put it onto the rifle, you got a reality check, okay? The FBI finally sent Mayfield's fingerprints to the Spanish authorities on April 2nd, but in the April 13th memo, the Spanish authorities contested the matching of the fingerprints from Brandon Mayfield to the ones associated with the Madrid bombing. Further, FBI authorities informed the FBI that they had other suspects in the case, Moroccan immigrants not linked to anyone in the U.S. The FBI continued surveillance of Mayfield and his family despite the information received from the Spanish authorities and the misrepresented to a secret FISA court that Spanish authorities had simply ruled Mayfield's match inconclusive when in the fact they had deemed it negative. So there you go. And I'll give you another example. I don't remember the guy's name. I can look it up, but you can look it up also. The Atlanta Olympic Park bombing. The FBI quickly focused on the security guard who found the bomb. Followed him everywhere. I think they even arrested him. Made his life hell. Okay? But he didn't do it. It was Eric Rudolph, I believe was the guy's name. They eventually caught him a couple of years later. Mayfield was concerned for the safety of his children and wife, and according to his father, he suspected that he was under surveillance by the federal authorities. In the weeks before his arrest, Mayfield's family was under the impression that their house had been broken into at least twice, although nothing was stolen. That's called a sneak and peek, people. They can go into your house, don't need a warrant, and then if they find something, they can go back and get a warrant and use the sneak and peek under the Terrorist Act to go in and seize the property. But they did take DNA. The FBI used national security letters in order to wiretap his phones, bug his house, and search his house several times, including collecting personal hygiene products to test for DNA. They mean hair samples and his saliva on his fucking toothbrush. Without a warrant. And it was all made up. Just because he was outspoken. That's called intimidation, people. As we discovered during the court case, the FBI records showed that this fingerprint, despite the sworn testimony of the FBI and DOJ agents, was in reality not an exact match, but only one of 20 prints similar to the ones retrieved from Madrid. Based on that list of people with small prints. So, if I go to the FBI in just a common interview and lie to the FBI, I can be arrested for lying to the FBI. But if the FBI writes down a sworn statement and lies, there's no consequences. Very bizarre. Based on the list of people with similar prints, the FBI had launched an extensive investigation of all 20 individuals using letters of national security. The investigation included medical records, financial records, employment records, etc. of all 20 people and their families. It was during this investigation that Brandon Mayfield's name rose to the top of the list. I bet because he was very outspoken. On May 6th, the FBI arrested Mayfield at his office in Beaverton, a suburb of Portland. That's on May 6th. Okay? On April 13th, the Spanish authorities said the fingerprints didn't match, but they still arrested Brandon Mayfield on May 6th. How's that possible? What kind of office head of the FBI guy is looking at that saying, okay, the Spanish say the fingerprints don't match, but we're going to arrest him anyway? The arrest was similar to the contemporary Mike Hawass, that's the cleric, under a material witness warrant rather than under charge. He was held with no access to his family and limited access to any legal counsel. So they don't even have to provide you with a lawyer if you're charged with terrorism under the Patriot Act. The FBI initially refused to inform either Mayfield or his family why he was being detained or where he was being held. Habeas corpus, people. They got to put you before a judge. Under the Patriot Act, they could do it, hold you indefinitely. The FBI initially, his family found out the extent of the allegations by watching the news, learning that someone had leaked the nature of the FBI investigation to the Associated Press, precipitating a rushed arrest. He was first, so somebody wanted to get in good with the Associated Press, so they leaked the information, and thus the FBI arrested him. He was at first held at Multnomah County Jail under a false name. He was later transferred to an unidentified location. His family protested that Mayfield had no connection with the bombings. His passport was expired. He was at home on the day of the attack and had not been out of the continent in over 11 to 14 years. Before his arrest, Spanish authorities informed the FBI in a letter dated April 13, 2004, that they received or reviewed the fingerprint on the bag as a negative match of Mayfield's fingerprint, though this letter was not communicated to Mayfield's attorneys. On May 19th, the Spanish authorities announced that the fingerprints actually belonged to an Algerian national. Brandon Mayfield was released from prison when the international press broke the story the next day, May 20th. A gag order remained in force for the next few days. By May 25th, the case was dismissed by a judge. So they suppressed the evidence to keep him in jail, to keep him sweating. For 20 days, the FBI conducted an internal review of Mayfield's arrest and detention, concluded that although he was not arrested solely due to his religious beliefs, they may have contributed to investigators' failure to take into account the Spanish concerns over the fingerprint identification. The FBI issued a press release announcing the report's conclusion that they had not misused the Patriot Act in the investigation. Civil libertarians and the ACL nonetheless considered Mayfield's detention a misuse of the material witness status statute. The FBI later admitted wrongdoing and apologized for their acts. In response, on October 4, 2004, Mayfield filed a lawsuit over his invasion of his privacy. He sought an injunction to force the government to return and destroy copies of items seized from his home and challenged the law which used against him as unconstitutional. So they took DNA, they put it into their database, and they have it forever now. They seized it unconstitutionally, his saliva and his hair samples, and took a DNA signature of that, kept it in his database, and they returned his saliva and his hair. So now they've got that forever, even though they seized it unconstitutionally. Anyway, so he filed a lawsuit for $2 million. I would have sued him for like $1 billion. And then it took, almost 10 years? And finally he won. And they got a formal letter of apology. And that's 2009, folks. Imagine what they were doing back in 1963. And imagine if you had right-wing rogue Confederates in the FBI, Dallas Police, and the Justice Department, and the CIA that were hell-bent and determined to frame Oswald. Okay? How did the bag get in the corner with his fingerprints on it? I just showed you where they falsely framed a guy saying his fingerprints were on a bag in Spain, much less where he worked at. And how did Oswald's, get a positive paraffin test on his hands? I'm not saying it happened, but if they can frame a guy in 2004, you don't think they can frame a guy in 1963 with a false paraffin, with a positive paraffin test? You can contaminate it. I just read to you how they can contaminate. That the government was trying to say the reason why there was a negative on the cheek is because it was contaminated. Well, if you can contaminate where it gets a negative, you can contaminate where he gives a positive. It's not hard to put, gunpowder residue on a cast after it's been sent between Dallas and the FBI lab. Or take the cast and set it beside a handgun and fire it. Boom, you got a positive test. I'm not saying all that happened. I'm just saying, look, if they're framing a guy in 2009, 2004, you're damn sure they could do it in 1963. And there's another case in Oregon. And I won't read that one. I'll just go over it real quickly. Basically, there was a Somalian guy who was born in Somalia and was raised, came to the U.S. as a child, was raised in Oregon. He went off to college, couldn't make it with the girls. This was after 9/11. A lot of girls didn't want to have anything to do with a Muslim, so they, steered away from him. So he's a guy, he's horny, he can't get laid, so he's angry. And then the FBI has a lot of informants inside the Muslim community that they put the squeeze on. Look, we busted you for this drugs or whatever, and we want you to work for us. And if you hear anything that can help your case, we'll knock some time. We'll go to the judge and tell him to knock some time off if you bring us information about something or somebody. And that's exactly what happened. You got an angry, horny 19-year-old Somali Muslim kid, no different than any other white guy or Hispanic guy out there. Gets angry, girls reject him. You got a lot of white incels out there that are killing people because girls won't sleep with them. Okay? And he just happens to mention this circumstance to his Muslim friend who just happens to be under the squeeze by the FBI. And he says, oh, God, I hate America. I wish I never came here. My parents brought me here, and I hate Americans and all this kind of stuff. Oh, really? Wow, well, what do you want to do about that? I'm just angry. I wish all Americans would die, Stupid shit kids say. 19, 20-year-old kids say stupid shit. Because they haven't learned to watch their mouths. Oh, well, hey, if you're angry, I can understand that. That's really horrible, the way the kids have been treating you at school just because you're a Muslim. And us Muslims got to stick together. And, hey, I got another friend over here that could possibly help you. Okay? And that's another Muslim informant or an FBI guy. So, long story short, the FBI make him a bomb. He never makes a bomb. He has no idea how to make the bomb. They don't even show him how to make the bomb. They just say, hey, I can make you a bomb, and then you can take that bomb and put it in a van, and we'll drive it to downtown Portland when they're having the Christmas lights, right after Thanksgiving, and you press a button, and it'll blow up the bomb and blow up the van and kill a bunch of Americans. You'll get your revenge. Praise be to Allah. Okay? The kid never made the bomb. He didn't know how to make the trigger device. He was handed the bomb. Okay? But the FBI's out is, along the way, the informant would say, oh, well, are you really sure you want to do this? You could die, or you could go to jail, and these things are bad, and it's really bad. But if you are still determined, I'll help you. And so, come 2010, the day after Thanksgiving, I was actually in Portland at a Led Zeppelin review, I guess you could say, at the Schnitzer, just like 3 blocks away. The kid drives his van. Matter of fact, you weren't allowed to park cars around there because of the crowds, but the FBI made a special request to the Portland police to reserve a spot for that van. If the kid had been doing it himself, he wouldn't have been able to make the bomb, wouldn't have been able to make the trigger device, and he wouldn't be able to park that damn van near there. But the FBI reserved him a spot. And the FBI informant also drove with him to show him the spot, because the kid didn't know where the fucking parking spot was. And then said, you know, praise be to Allah, God be with you, and all this stuff, and good luck, and go get your 72 virgins. And the FBI informant stepped out of the van and left. And they had the van wired for sound, and in the crowd and around was, God knows, 20 different FBI agents and policemen. And as soon as the kid pushed the button, the doors flew open, the bomb didn't go off, and the FBI arrested the guy and charged him with terrorism and building a bomb that he didn't ever build, and had no knowledge of building. And then they took him to court and laid all this down in front of him with the Patriot Act and all this stuff. And of course he couldn't afford an attorney, and the government appointed attorney said, hey, the best thing for you to do is to make a plea, because they want to give you 50 years, and if you make a plea, you can be out in 10. And so what's a guy like him going to do? He makes a plea. Oh, I don't want to be in jail 50 years and die in jail. He made a plea with the government. They had set it all up. They had the informants that reached out and found him, brought him to the FBI, guy who made the bomb for him. They made the trigger device. And I think they even got him the van in the parking spot. Okay? Also, the FBI in Portland could get headlines that they stopped a terrorist act because we're such good detectives. And it's no different with Oswald. They put him in the building. They sheep-dipped him in New Orleans. I'm not saying the FBI did this. I'm just saying this right-wing group of rogue agents in the FBI, CIA, the Cubans, and the Justice Department, and the military. They sheep-dipped Oswald. They got him to go out and do these. He never went on TV or the radio or put out flyers in Dallas, but here he is in New Orleans doing the same thing. The reason why they did that in New Orleans, okay, because he had done the same thing in Dallas, he would have never been able to get a job in that Texas School Book Depository, because everybody would have known him. They would have seen him on the TV, they would have read about him, and no one would have worked with him, okay, and therefore Mr. Truly would have had to have fired him, and thus he wouldn't be in that position to be on that 6th supposedly to shoot the president. So, with this poor kid, this Muslim Somali kid that the FBI manufactured a case of terrorism, they manufactured a case to assassinate the president and use their patsy. They put Oswald in that building a month and a half before the president, where the president even knew he was going to be in Dallas. There was a general consensus that the president would have to, go through the South, maybe even Texas, but they didn't know where. The president could have easily just flew into Love Field, okay, and drove to the trademark and done his speech and raised his money there, just like he did in Fort Worth. There was no parade in Fort Worth. He flew into Fort Worth and had a luncheon and went back to the hotel. He didn't have to have a parade. Matter of fact, parades like that with the president Kennedy were very, very rare. They appealed to the president's ego because he had Jackie. Jackie was very popular. And then they peeled back the layers of security. They put Oswald into the sniper's. They framed Oswald into the sniper's nest, and boom, there you go. Now, I'm not saying I totally believe all that, but it damn sure looks like it to me. Because if they're doing the same thing to a Muslim guy in 2010, when everybody's got the internet and people are much more aware of what's going on, you don't think they could do that under Hoover back in 1963? Anyway, that's enough of that. We'll keep going. And again, I'm not saying all the FBI, I'm not saying all the CIA, I'm not saying all the Secret Service were against Kennedy and killed him and conspired to kill him. I'm not saying all of the, Cubans were involved in killing the president. But like I said, think about it. When you go to work every day, if you're working with a large corporation, you don't know everything that's going on in that. If you're in one office, think about it. When you walk, before you get to your office, look through the door of the office next to you and think to yourself, do you know what's going on in that office? Do you know what they're talking about? Do you know why are they getting paid in that office? What are they doing for work? I bet you can't answer that. You don't know. Oh, that's the accounting department. They just do accounting, right? Yeah, but accounting for what? What exactly are they doing? You don't know. You don't know what they're doing in the office next to you, just like some guy in the FBI office doesn't know what some other right-wing Birch Society member, conservative, always voted Republican, guy in the FBI office is doing. I mean, we're talking about the FBI in the 1960s that was sending handguns and notes to Martin Luther King, a peace officer, a peace activist, and telling him to commit suicide because Hoover thought that the civil rights movement was a communist front to divide America and weaken America. We got the same Hoover, okay, same FBI 5 years before MLK is assassinated, and Hoover hated Kennedy and hated Robert Kennedy. So you don't think he might be involved in at least winking and nodding for other right-wing people to kill the president? Or at least try to cover it up that agents of the FBI, rogue agents of the FBI, were involved in the assassination of the president. Again, like I said, not everybody was involved. Just think about it. At your work, there are people in there that are Democrats and Republicans. Can you stand up and look around your office and say, that guy's a Democrat, that guy's a Republican, that guy likes Ron Paul, that guy likes Trump, that guy voted for Biden? You can't. You don't know. You don't know what the inner political feelings are of someone. Religious also. You can't say, hey, that guy right there is a Baptist just by looking at him. That guy is Catholic just by looking at him. You can't. You don't know. So, the inner workings of someone's mind is going to affect the way they do things and see things. And believe me, if someone doesn't trust you or think you're on their team or on their side, they're not going to let you in. It's all going to be smiles and dials, okay? Especially in America, we got a lot of fake people in America. People project and say what they believe people want them to see. So, let's just be realistic here. Again, like I said, I'm not saying all the FBI is corrupt. You really don't need all the FBI. You need just a few guys. Okay? Just a few guys. That's all it takes. Alright, until next time, we're going to keep going down this list here and seeing what we can find. And I did this testing of Oswald's rifle, and we're going to see what we find on that next. Alright, take care. Until tomorrow. This is a lot of fun. I'm really having fun. I'm learning a lot. Hopefully you're learning something too. Alright, take care.